If you are just starting out as a beginner, the first thing you need to do is carefully draw a simple circle on your canvas. At this early stage of the process, it is very important that you don't place any other elements or details inside or around it just yet. This approach is part of a very simple and straightforward method designed for ease of use. The core principle you need to remember is this: you must consistently perform these specific actions all the way around the entire perimeter of the circle to get the best results. This exercise is incredibly useful for your overall mobility. Carefully sink your heel down toward the floor, then tilt it just slightly to engage the correct muscles. Keep sinking it in deeper as you maintain your balance and focus on the stretch. We also work exclusively with the tip. And then from this point, you can just continue moving forward with the process. You might want to make the overall scale a little bit bigger than it was before to see the details. Feel free to try out several different options and settings to find what works best for your project. Just keep adjusting it exactly like this until you're happy with the result. By following this specific method, you'll eventually see a beautiful little star shape begin to form right before your eyes. And then there is the matter of the tilt. It is absolutely essential that you take the time to fully understand the underlying principle behind this movement. You must carefully sink the heel of the tool, gently tilt it to the side, and then continue to tilt it further until the desired effect is achieved. Just keep tilting it steadily and precisely. Lift the heel, tilt it. I'll explain this part, and the next video, because there are some technical nuances. Look, there's a circle, no matter what shape yours is. Let's say we divide it in half. It doesn't really matter here. Although, let's put a mark here too, and here as well. Look, when we get to this part, we need to trim. All the cuts should start from here to here. From this side, the cuts, not through cuts, but trims, should go from here to here. That's the required order. There's nothing wrong, nothing bad at all, if you make a sketch for yourself like this. What exactly? From this half to this part, from here to here, and from this half to this half, from here to here. Because if you start cutting, on the contrary, you will find that it actually comes out looking quite messy here. It is likely to chip and cause other issues as well. So I would strongly suggest that you try it out in practice for yourself. Then try doing it the other way so you can clearly see what the specific difference is. Let me show you how this works in practice. So I work carefully from this point here to this point here. And then from here, as you can see, it is very clean. Now that we have successfully made it all the way up to the halfway point of this project, you might be wondering exactly what we need to do next to keep things moving along. Well, the next step is to carefully turn the whole piece over. Once it is flipped, we are going to take our time to really clean it up and make sure everything looks perfect. Now, looking at the other side, we are simply going to do it the exact same way we did the first part. Just keep following that same process step by step. There you go. You are doing a great job, and it is really starting to come together now. That looks nice and clean. Now, I want you to pay close attention right here. Carefully set it exactly in the center. Go ahead and mark a secondary circle for yourself to use as a guide. Now you can remove the compass. Mark it clearly with a thread flag. There you go, just like that. Carefully set it exactly in the right place, and then, without rushing yourself at all, go ahead and make the cut at a slight angle. Use very steady and confident movements throughout the process. Ideally, you should try your best to make all of these specific cuts in one single smooth and continuous motion to ensure the best possible result. If you find that you can't quite make the entire cut in one single go, then simply set the tool down for a moment, make a small initial cut to guide you, and then carefully pull it back out. Just pull it out slowly. The most important thing to remember throughout this whole process is that you must not rush any of these steps. Now, go ahead and pick up that short, semicircular profile PCC there. It is finally time to take action and move forward with the next stage of the project. Right at this point, it is quite possible that the material might break or crack just a little bit, so for this specific reason, it is actually even better to take your time to prep the spot thoroughly so it is even sharper than before. If you do that, then you definitely won't have this kind of messy and chaotic star shape forming all over the surface. You want to ensure that every single edge is perfectly smooth and refined to avoid any structural issues later on in the process, which will ultimately lead to a much cleaner and more professional looking final result that you can be proud of. I'm going to show you absolutely everything here on purpose. I'm not cutting a single thing out of this video, because the truth is, you're going to go through all of these exact same steps too. You'll definitely get little chips and splinters along the way, just like I do, and just like everyone else does when they start out. So right here, carefully set it into its proper place and fix it down point by point. This is the specific way that we correct it together. It is incredibly convenient and straightforward for us to systematically clean up and remediate any defects we encounter, ensuring that every single issue is addressed with maximum efficiency and minimal effort. This streamlined process allows our team to maintain high standards without any unnecessary complications, making the task of fixing these flaws much easier than it would otherwise be in a more traditional or manual setting. By having such an accessible way to handle these problems, we can consistently improve our output and ensure that everything is functioning exactly as it should be, providing a seamless experience for everyone involved in the project from start to finish. Using a slotted flag chisel at an angle. Lift it with the beveled edge and go over it again. By following this specific technique, you will start to see a beautiful little sun shape beginning to emerge. So, at the very same time, you are effectively cleaning up the edges of your work, and also, can you believe it? You are adding an entirely new, intricate facet to your ornament. In the end, after all your hard work, you will be left with this stunning, radiant sun-like pattern that really makes the whole piece stand out. So we clean it up accordingly. That actually turns out looking pretty nice in the end. Once again, we carefully set the compass to the correct width and drew a very confident, smooth circle for ourselves right here. At this point in the process, we are going to follow the exact same steps as we did before to ensure consistency. Namely, we will focus on the following details. You can actually go ahead and make it quite a bit bigger than it was before. Let's make it a little larger right here. I'll change it for you, because whenever the specific details are too small, it becomes much harder to work with, and that is especially true for beginners who are just starting out. You can make one a little bigger, the other a little smaller. Ideally, when creating your own compositions and ornamentation, what should you focus on? Not asymmetry, but symmetry. Take a look at these specific spots right here. We are definitely going to come back and clean them up a bit later on, just like this one and this other one over here. Each of these areas actually possesses its own very unique and specific features that require a different approach. I made a conscious decision to skip over them on purpose for the time being. If you look closely, you can see that I intentionally left two of them exactly as they are because of the subtle nuances and complexities involved in the restoration process. When you make your initial cut right at this specific point, as you can clearly see, the sidewall turns out extremely messy and quite uneven, and that happens when you cut from this other spot over here too. So what you really need to do is change the entire direction of the cut, and then you will find that it comes out looking perfectly clean. Right here, the fundamental principle of cutting mechanics that I explained to you earlier comes into play, specifically regarding exactly where and how you cut. Only in this particular case, we are going to change the direction. It cuts from here to there, and then you can mostly use a knife and basically slice it, and so on. I often talk about the principle of modification. You can make a cut along a line, for example, work along that line in a semicircle, let's say. But what I'm always talking about is this principle of modification. Please don't worry about these uneven parts right now, because we are going to even them all out later on in the process. It is absolutely essential that you pay very close attention to the specific direction of the grain as you work. Using your brush, you should try your best to loosen the material as much as you possibly can with gentle strokes, but you must remember that it is really not advisable to lift it up away from the surface at any point during this stage. We carefully agitate the material, but that is only possible if you happen to have a specialized and incredibly sharp cutting tool, and even then we still frequently end up with this specific kind of rough section. We are going to address and rectify every single one of those issues right now. At this stage, we will really emphasize the overall direction, since we have already precisely set the required depth and successfully made the necessary tilt. When you are working on these intricate sections, it is always much better to slightly undercut the small details rather than risk overcutting them, which would unfortunately ruin the entire piece of work. You should keep in mind that it is far better to undercut just a little bit at first, as you can always remove more material later, but you can never put it back once it has been cut away. Taking your time and being conservative with your cuts will ensure that the final result remains high quality and free of any irreversible mistakes that might happen if you are too aggressive with your tools. We trim it. It's actually much better to do the thorough cleaning once you are completely finished so it doesn't easily get clogged up. And we lift the hand upward. So what we are going to do next is carefully tuck it right underneath the opposing element to ensure a secure fit. Once that is in place, we will take a moment to thoroughly clean everything up so that the final result looks perfectly polished and professional. You really don't need to worry at all about these remaining parts right now, because we are also going to be making several more precise cuts right here in order to add a lot more volume to the hair. To put it simply, one specific part interacts directly with another part, and then the whole thing starts to come together just like this. So let's just keep on watching the process unfold. First, we carefully lifted a small corner of the piece and began to make some light notches in the areas where we still have some material left over, and we are doing the same thing right here too, gradually going a bit deeper as we progress. That is the specific reason why I chose not to make any deep cuts in this particular section earlier. So it is very important for us to keep these fundamental principles in mind as we continue with the rest of the project. And we need to convey their shapes. After that, we take some time to clean everything up properly. This is exactly how the final piece turns out. We carefully lifted a large semicircle from the base, and then we very slowly and cautiously twist it around just like this. Our ultimate goal here is to deepen the entire structure just a little bit more to get it perfect. Now keep in mind that this entire process can definitely be accomplished using a variety of other chisels if you have them available. However, I am working under the assumption here, just for the sake of this example, that you might not actually have any other specialized chisels on hand to use, so in that case, you can simply flip the tool over to get the right angle. If you are able to carefully carve the wood cleanly and smoothly enough during this stage, then you will find that you don't even need to spend any extra time trying to sand it down later. Alright, let's go ahead and stretch out the flag as much as we can. Now, very carefully, we need to start cutting along the entire circumference of the circle. However, I have to say, it's actually not very convenient to try and cut right here in this specific spot. To be perfectly honest with you, it's a bit tricky. Just follow along and do it exactly like this. We intentionally leave these parts because the next step will be done with an angled chisel. Here, it's easy to pull through. And so, we finally end up with this truly one-of-a-kind, intricate snowflake design that looks absolutely stunning. Now, carefully take your piece and place it right here, making sure the beveled edge is facing the correct way, and then slowly and steadily begin to work your way all the way toward the very center of the project. After that, you just clean